The wind comes from the north without warning. It crosses the moorland in long, cold sweeps, carrying the smell of wet grass and something older, the uncut dark of ground that no Roman road has ever reached. To the south, the road is straight and paved and certain. To the north, there is nothing that Rome controls. This is the Tyne Gap, in the province of Britannia, in the year 122 AD. The Emperor Hadrian has arrived in the province and given an order: build a wall. 80 Roman miles of stone and turf, from the Solway Firth in the west to the mouth of the Tyne in the east. It will be the northernmost permanent frontier of the Roman Empire. The men building it are not laborers brought in for the task. They are soldiers, legionaries of the 2nd, 6th, and 20th legions, auxiliaries from across the empire, men from Syria, from Gaul, from the Rhine frontier, from North Africa. They speak different languages at the cooking fire. They pray to different gods, but they eat the same food, sleep in the same barracks, and fear the same things. One of them is a soldier of the Sixth Victrix Legion. He has been in Britannia for 3 years. He has another 17 to serve. Today, like every day, begins before the sun. The Contubernium, the 8-man tent group, the basic unit of Roman military life, sleeps in a single barrack room approximately 4 meters wide and 5 meters deep. There are 8 men. There are 2 wooden bunks. There is a chest for equipment, a stand for armor, and a smell that no amount of cold Britannic wind fully removes. The soldier wakes before dawn, not because he wants to, because the watches change, and the watch before dawn is the coldest, and the century's Optio has no patience for men who cannot find their sandals in the dark. The leather sandals, the caligae, are not soft. They are heavy-soled, iron-nailed, and designed to cover ground at 4 miles an hour for days without failing. He dresses quickly. The tunic is wool. The breeches are wool. The cloak, when the weather demands it, and in Britannia the weather almost always demands it, is a heavy military sagum, fastened at the shoulder. Over all of this goes armor, segmented iron lorica segmentata, checked every morning for corrosion and loose fittings. A soldier whose armor fails is a soldier who dies. The Roman soldier is not fed luxuriously. He is fed reliably. The distinction matters enormously. Across the ancient world, armies that cannot supply themselves collapse. The Roman logistical system, the supply lines, the granaries, the annona militaris, is as much a weapon of Roman power as the legions themselves. The basic ration is grain, primarily wheat, issued to the Contubernium in bulk and ground by the soldiers themselves using hand querns kept at the barrack. From this flour they make a flat bread called pulse, when boiled into porridge or baked on a flat iron pan over the fire. It is dense, filling, and almost entirely without flavor unless supplemented. Supplementation comes from several directions. The military supply system provides olive oil, vinegar, posca, the soldier's standard drink, made from sour wine diluted with water, and salt. Lard and cured pork appear regularly. So does dried fish, packed in amphorae that have traveled from the Mediterranean along a supply chain of remarkable complexity. A soldier with a free afternoon might trade with a local Brigantian farmer for cheese or smoked meat. The army has no interest in hungry, resentful men. He eats his breakfast, grain porridge, oil, a heel of bread, sitting on the barrack step with 3 men from his Contubernium. They eat fast. Work on the wall begins at first light. The wall is not built by one man. It is built by centuries, 80 men per century, 60 centuries per legion, 3 legions working in sections. Each century is assigned a stretch and marked it. The carved stone tablets that future archaeologists will call centurial stones record the work, the name of the century, the distance built, the date. They are not monuments. They are production records. The soldier carries stone. He mixes mortar from lime and local aggregate. He lifts dressed-facing stones into courses under the direction of a specialist, an architectus, a trained military engineer who has surveyed the line, calculated the foundations, and determined the width and height of each section. The soldier does what he is told, with tools, with his hands, with the weight of his body applied to the problem of moving large objects across uneven ground. Roman military training produces a soldier who can fight, fortify, and build. The same man who drills with a gladius in the morning can lay dressed stone in the afternoon. This is not incidental. It is the design. An army that can construct its own fortifications does not depend on civilian labor it cannot control. The wall rising from the Tyne Gap is a military achievement executed by military hands. By midday, the soldier has laid his section of course. His hands are raw. The wind is still coming from the north. Somewhere ahead of the construction line, scouts have reported movement. Caledonian tribes watching from the high ground, gauging the pace of work and the permanence of Rome's intention. The soldier does not see them. He knows they are there. Around the construction camp, something grows that was not planned. A vicus, a civilian settlement, forms outside the fort gates wherever soldiers are stationed for more than a season. Traders follow armies the way birds follow plows. They know where the money is, and Roman soldiers are paid in coin. The denarius is the basic unit of legionary pay. After deductions, for food, for equipment replacement, for the burial club that ensures every soldier receives a funeral, a legionary in 122 AD takes home a modest wage. But modest Roman military pay is still more reliable than anything available to most people in Britannia at this moment. The traders know it. At midday, the soldier walks to the vicus with 2 men from his century. There is a cook shop offering hot food and a bench. He buys a bowl of thick stew, turnip, lentil, scraps of boiled pork. He drinks pasca. He eats without hurrying for the first time today. Around him, the vicus is multilingual and practical. A Syrian auxiliary bargains in Greek with a trader who answers in a rough Britannic dialect, and somehow both men end the exchange satisfied. This is the Roman frontier, not Rome, but Rome's logic running through it. The logic of exchange, of fixed price, of measurable value, spreading north by the meter as the wall rises. Every permanent Roman fort has a bathhouse. Even the temporary camps built during the construction phase include bathing facilities, smaller, more basic, but present. The Roman understanding that soldiers who can wash are soldiers who do not die of preventable disease is not stated in medical terms. It is stated as discipline, as order, as the correct way to run a professional force. The soldier reaches the bathhouse in the late afternoon, after the second work period ends. The building is stone. It has a cold room, a warm room, and a hot room, heated by a hypocaust system, a raised floor through which hot air from a furnace circulates. He scrapes the day's grime from his skin with a strigil, a curved iron blade. There is olive oil for this. There is no soap. The bathhouse is also where the century talks, about the wall, about the construction pace, about a rumor that the emperor himself will inspect the frontier before spring, about a soldier from the 3rd cohort who took a fall from the rampart scaffolding, about what comes after the wall, whether the line holds, whether the tribes to the north will accept the boundary or test it.
The evening meal is the day's largest.
The contubernium cooks together. One man tends the fire, a small iron brazier, fuel carried in from the surrounding woodland. Another grinds the remaining grain. A third prepares whatever supplement exists tonight. Dried fish soaked and rehydrated, a handful of dried figs from a supply amphora, lentils boiled until they soften. Before eating, the soldier pauses at the small shrine in the corner of the barrack room. The lararium, the household god's place, is a simple wooden shelf with a clay figure, a genius, a protective spirit. Some men in the century keep different figures. The Syrian auxiliary has a small bronze plaque to Jupiter Dolichanes. The soldier from North Africa offers to a god whose name his fellow soldiers cannot pronounce. No one objects. The Roman army is accommodating in matters of religion, provided the gods do not interfere with the roster. After the evening meal, the century is theoretically at rest. In practice, there are letters to write, or to dictate to the literate men in the contubernium, and equipment to maintain and the quiet arithmetic of survival. How many days until the next payday? Whether the boots will last another month? What the officer said this morning that might mean a posting change in the spring? The night watch is divided into 4 shifts. Each shift is 3 hours. The soldier draws the third watch, which means he sleeps from dusk until midnight, rises, walks the rampart for 3 hours in the dark, and returns to the barrack with 4 hours remaining before dawn. The wall is not yet complete. The watch tonight is the turf rampart of the temporary camp, not the permanent stone frontier. But the principle is the same. He walks with a lantern. He walks alone. The orders are to challenge any movement, to call the alarm at any approach, and to stay awake. The north is dark. There are no Roman lights beyond the construction line. There is no road, no farm, no vicus. There is the moor and the high ground and whatever moves through it. The soldier knows the Caledonians are not a myth. He knows the Brigantes to the south are not entirely pacified. He knows that the wall is being built because the frontier is real and the threat beyond it is real. He does not know if it will hold. No soldier does. He knows only what is in front of him: the dark, the wind from the north, and the 3 hours between now and relief. He watches, he listens. He counts his steps along the rampart and begins again. The soldier whose name we do not know, because Roman records kept the names of officers and commanders, not common legionaries, served somewhere on the Hadrianic frontier in the year 122 AD. He was one of approximately 15,000 men stationed along the wall and its supporting forts. He ate grain and dried fish shipped from 400 miles away. He slept in an 8-man room. He built a wall 80 Roman miles long with his hands. He feared the dark to the north, as all frontier soldiers fear the ground they cannot see. He feared disease, which killed more soldiers than battles did. He feared the ordinary failures of a hard life: broken equipment, bad weather, the wrong posting. Survival on the Roman frontier was not glory. It was repetition. It was grain and stone and cold wind and keeping the watch. It was relentless.